Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Knights of the Pageless Library. We are a little podcast dedicated to reviewing audiobooks. I am Bo Knight, and joined as always by my brother Ryan Knight. And today we have a very special episode for you guys, where we are taking a look at Cold as Hell, written by Rhett C, Bruno and Jaime Castle, and narrated by Roger Clark.
Yeah, and if you guys have been listening to us for a little while, this is book one of the Black Badge series, and we had reviewed Dead Acre a while back, which was book 0.5 of this series. So it was sort of a prequel to this series. So this is the first actual book in the series, and we very fortunately were able to get a hold of it before its release date, so that we could come out with a day one review for you guys.
Yeah, we got that early access.
We're super excited about that. We'll probably mention it multiple times. We're sorry, but it's a big deal for us, even if it's not a big deal
feels
for you guys.
really, really cool.
Yeah. I have to give a big thank you to Rhett Bruno. He's the one who actually gave us access to this so that we could review it early, which is very, very awesome. So we really appreciate that. So this book, as we said, it won't actually be out yet. We at the time of recording, but this will probably drop day one, day and date with the actual audiobook itself. This book will also be released on paperback and stuff as well, and I'm not sure on the release dates on those. So
We're probably concurrent.
I would think so. I would think they want to release all that stuff at the exact same time, but this will just be with the audiobook, just so everybody's clear on that. If you guys like that, if you don't like that, if you have anything to say to us, just please feel free to email us. kotpl.pod@gmail.com is by far the easiest way to get a hold of us. At this point, you can pretty much just Google Knights of the Pageless Library, and we'll probably fill the entire first page, because we've kind of been littering the internet, and our name is unique enough that not much other stuff will come up. So
sweet.
Normally, I would say we listen to this on Audible, which is technically where we listen to it. But as I said, with the early access that we got, it wasn't necessarily the completed final version that might be out on Audible. So there may be some slight differences, other than the story and everything obviously will be exactly the same. But there might be a few things that we experienced that you might not. And then once the final Audible version is out, it might be, have a beginning and an ending or something that are slightly different. So
yeah, and they might put some music between the chapters or something.
Oh yeah, that could be. Yeah, there could be bump music. Who knows? That's getting kind of popular these days, it seems like.
I like it. I think I like it.
Sometimes I like it too.
I mean, Metro does the best, I think, which is the train tracks, but
yeah, with the little crazy keyboard beat sound.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like a heartbeat, I think. Okay, we're getting off track. So Cold as Hell, yeah. Do we know how long it is? Oh, okay, you got it right here. So it's 12 hours and 51 minutes. So it's kind of it's on the little bit of the longer side. I think it's about perfect for me.
I was gonna say, I think it's a good length. And I think for this story, it was a very good length, because that was one of our criticisms of Dead Acre, is we wished it was longer. We wish there was more of it.
Wish there was more.
So yeah, this one definitely solved that.
So what did you think of our narrator, Roger Clark?
Well, I think I really want to have Roger Clark on the podcast, because
yay, me
he
too.
would only because he would, we would almost have the trifecta, having been able to talk to Oliver Wyman, Bronson Pinchot, and then if we got to talk to Roger Clark, that's like the holy trinity, I think, of narrators at this point.
Yeah, is he the best cowboy ever, or
he's got to be. I mean, I think
I find myself imitating him all the time now. I can't help but put on a husky voice and talk about stuff. He's great.
It's pretty impressive, actually. I think Roger Clark's performance in this book, as well as Dead Acre, but in this book especially, with much wider cast and a lot more people that he had to voice. It is incredibly on point, and his voice for James Crowley, the main character, I don't know if they could have picked a better person for it.
No, I feel like it's so fitting.
Yeah, I think he really brings that character especially to life for me. Well, what would you call the genre of this book exactly?
It's like a Western fantasy. No. Yeah, I guess that is kind of what it is.
It is. So this story has some religious elements in it. It has some science fiction stuff in a way, some fantasy stuff in a way, but it is all in a Western setting, which is a pretty cool mashup in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It is really unique.
I think it's unique, and I think the way that these guys, that Rhett Bruno and Jaime Castle, fit it together, we'll talk about it a little more after the spoiler wall, but I think that they did a great job of fitting it together in a not obnoxious way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like you could make this, because it has religious elements and religious tones. This could have been a book that I easily did not like, I'll say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think they kept a like I feel like the religious stuff is kind of loose, especially with like there's more in this book that Dead Acre didn't allude to, that there's more kind of going on than just like heaven and hell.
Sure.
And I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, not only heaven and hell, but there's basically they want to talk about, the Christian heaven and hell. That's kind of the main what is happening, because with with Crowley is basically, he's the hand of God, or a hand of God. So it's very much so like Christian God. However, this story, I like that it delves into some Native American stuff. It delves into a few other things outside of Christianity, which is kind of good for the story, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
What did you think of this one? Easy to follow?
Yeah, I think it is. I think this is definitely kind of, it's not like it's not a very complicated book. It feels very like kind of like like a TV show that you would see today.
Sure.
It all feels very smooth, and they repeat themselves a lot about like what's going on and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I think that all kind of helps this story go down pretty smooth.
I think so too. Excuse me. And I appreciate that. I think it makes it easier that the story is told from Crowley's first person perspective. So you're not changing characters a lot, you're not changing perspectives a lot, there's not a lot of confusing things going on. You know that the story is being told from Crowley, other than a few kind of time changes, and those are basically just visions of the past or things like that, but they're very easy to decipher in this book.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Monster Hunter a little bit in the way that it's written.
Sure.
Just like how concise kind of like the scene is set a lot of the time.
Right.
Like it paints a really good picture with not a lot of words.
Right. And this to me is kind of nice, because we've recently reviewed some older books that have very flowery and poetic language, and this is not that. This is told from an old school cowboy. The language is simple, and it's easy to understand for somebody with a simple mind like me, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it is kind of a bit of a switch up going from like Dorian Gray to this.
Oh,
and it is a big welcome for me too, because it's way less complicated.
Right.
I don't have to get out my freaking thesaurus.
Right. Exactly. Much easier to just kind of put on and listen to, and you can do other things, I think, while you're listening to this one. And if you miss a couple of sentences because you were daydreaming or whatever, you'll be able to jump right back in and still understand what's going on. Because like you said, they kind of repaint the scene multiple times during the scene to cement it in your mind, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into the recommendations a little bit. What do you think?
I after listening to Dead Acre and definitely saying that I wanted more of this story, this was a great jumping off point, I think, for this series for me. I would highly recommend this one just because I really enjoyed it, number one. And number two, I could recommend this to a lot of people, is what's nice about it. You know, if you're coming into this because, I mean, I highly doubt if you're like a religious person, you're going to want to listen to a book called Cold as Hell. But
Good point.
I feel like this is available to a much more broad audience than it could have been. Like I said, Crowley could just be this freaking super religious figure, like superhero, and he can do no wrong, and nothing bad happens to him because he's the hand of God. That's not what this story is at all. And I think that makes it very accessible, in my opinion. It's really cool that he is flawed. He's just a really cool character that I got to like a lot while I was listening to this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you put kind of exactly how I feel too. I really enjoyed this book. I definitely want more from the series, especially with the ending. I'm like, oh man, I gotta know what's gonna fucking happen now.
Yeah, for sure.
And like the background machinations of these higher powers is very interesting to me. And the dichotomy between the White Throne and Crowley is very interesting to me too. Like I don't really know where that's going, and I feel like that's a good sign where I can't tell what's going to happen. That's a good way to keep me very interested. And like Ryan said, James Crowley is very flawed. He's a good character, and I enjoyed the heck out of this one. It was pretty much a smile on my face from start to finish, and I want more.
Yeah. Let's just say I'm very excited that this is a series and that
Me
I know
too,
there
yeah.
will be more coming out because I'm excited to know where the story goes. Plus it's kind of a nice unique story in itself. I mean, a Western kind of religious holy war type of thing between legitimate angels and demons. That's pretty cool. I mean,
That
that's a
is
cool
pretty
setting.
cool. I like a Western setting anyway, like
Sure.
small towns, saloons, gunfights, horses. I enjoy that setting a lot.
Five Finger
And
Fillet.
yeah, Five Finger Fillet, or what's the other name for it?
Oh yeah, I can't remember. He called it a few different things. I
There's
just
three
remember
of them,
Five
and one
Finger
of them I
Fillet.
was like, I like that one. Yeah, it's a great setting. It's a great marriage of two things I like, of between like the evil monsters and like the good guys fighting off them, essentially in a Western setting. I feel like, and like you said, he's not an all-powerful hero. I really like his power set too, that basically his only thing is like he can't be killed. That's really
Yeah.
the only advantage he has.
Right. He essentially is like a zombie, a fully conscious zombie is what he kind of is, which is also in itself kind of unique.
Well, and he has to rely more on his cunning than
Mhm.
like brute force.
Right.
And I really like that. And all the stuff about his past is super interesting, and like who he used to be and like what he used to do, I feel like is all very intriguing. I feel like there's a lot of intrigue here. I highly recommend this one too. Let's get past the spoiler wall before I start ruining stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good to me. I was hoping you'd say that. Yeah. So for anybody who's new here, we're going to pass the spoiler wall. So if this book sounds like something you are interested in, please pause the podcast. Go ahead and go over and listen to it. We both highly recommend this one, which hasn't
definitely
happened in a
give
while.
them your money.
For
Rhett C,
sure.
Bruno, they deserve it.
For sure. And then after you listen to it, please come back here and hear what we have to say about it. And then, yeah, again, feel free to share your thoughts about it with us.
Yeah.
So right off the bat here, one thing I want to say is that I love the fact that Crowley is a very flawed character. I don't think that happens often enough in stories. And I like the way that this goes. So even with your comparison to Monster Hunter, it made me kind of think of something that I love the Monster Hunter series. I love those books. But in a way, Owen, the way Larry Correia wrote Owen as the main character, while Owen has his flaws, we had this same criticism is Owen is like perfect other than some very silly flaws. Like Owen rarely makes mistakes. But
Yeah.
I feel like with Crowley, it's almost just he makes mistakes until he solves the problem. And I think that's a much more realistic approach to something.
It is. He does kind of fail forward. Like, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, I got to keep going.
I think he even brings that up.
He's an unrelenting force. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I like about it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like he may not beat you the first time, but he only has to win once. And you have to beat him every single time.
Right. And he's not going to quit, which is very
Yeah,
cool.
he doesn't quit. Which I guess is probably perfect for like a hand of God, right?
I would think so.
They just never give up.
Yeah. And so, as I said, this whole story is told from Crowley's perspective. So the opening of this is with Crowley riding his horse, Temperina, and he's coming into
He's more
this...
than just a horse.
Yeah. I almost was going to say Torrent because honestly, that's all I could think about was back and forth between Torrent and Temperina.
He is also a good boy.
So this opens up though with Crowley and Temperina coming into this outside of this town called Lonely Hill. And at first Crowley thinks that there's ashes floating down from the sky as if something's burning nearby. But then he realizes it's actually snow, which is weird because he's in the middle of the desert.
In summertime.
What does he call it? Satan's asshole. That's
Yeah,
what...
he does. He does say that.
I got to bring that up too. That's another reason I love Crowley as a character is he just seems like a real person. Like his thoughts that he's sharing like that is something about it being all it is out in the middle of nowhere and it's Satan's asshole. And, you know, it just seems like things a real person would say, not a written character. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, it does.
I don't know. I like that about his character that I feel like he almost seems like a real person was writing these thoughts instead of somebody else was trying to get in the mind of this character.
Yeah, he does feel very real. And this book is funny too. I guess we didn't really mention that before.
Oh yeah, definitely funny.
This book is really funny. Crowley is great. And he cusses up a storm too, which I think is just so funny.
Right. Probably should have mentioned this before I passed the spoiler wall because, you know, so if some young kid is like, oh, cool, Mom, will you buy me this book? This book is super violent, by the way.
Super violent. Yeah, I forgot about that too.
It touches on some very, what's the word? Very touchy subjects. It alludes to things like rape and things like that. So if you have a weak stomach to that, or if you don't have the testicular fortitude, as Crowley puts it sometimes, yeah, you might steer clear of this one. I know it's a little late to be saying that, but I honestly, though, it could have been a lot worse with the things that it said. I felt like the things that were said, both language-wise and those sorts of things, like alluding to rape and things like that. Like there is no scenes of rape in this book. I've definitely listened to books that have those things in it.
Yeah, and that's a lot for me sometimes.
Right. This doesn't have those scenes in it. There's just they talk about it. But I feel like it was all done intentionally and it was done well. It fits in. It wasn't just thrown in for like that shock value for at all.
Right.
So what, let's see. Crowley comes up in, oh, that's right. He comes into Lonely Hill. And basically the scene that he comes across is the town has been almost devastated and there's like chunks of ice everywhere and snow. And most of it is centering around this bank in the middle of town called Dufault's. I think it's called Dufault's Bank and Trust.
Are they all called that?
I believe so.
I couldn't remember.
I think that's what they're all. I'm going to assume that's what they're all called. All you need to know is that it's for Dufault. That's the main part of that.
Yeah, and yeah, everything's pretty shot up, right?
It's all shot up, but mostly the biggest part that stands out is that there's guys like frozen to the ground or frozen in place in like blocks of ice, which is crazy.
Yeah, which I actually like what that ends up coming from.
Yeah, I do
Because
too.
when he's like explaining, I was like, huh, I guess I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I kind of like it too.
But this is like when Crowley uses like I guess one of his abilities that makes him a better detective than most is he can divine people if he like touches their blood. And he says something in Latin, but it's not necessarily vital, right? Like he doesn't have to say that, but he does.
I like that he does it. He like touches the blood and then he like smears it across the guy's forehead. He says this thing in Latin and then he takes his glove off and does the divining, which all he really has to do is take his glove off and touch the dead person, which I thought that was kind of funny.
And yeah, this is kind of where we get a glimpse of the main antagonists here. He sees a woman who's like super fast and she's like super graceful. Well, actually, at this point, I guess I don't even realize if it's a woman or a man, but super fast, like inhumanly fast, just kind of like cutting people up, throwing hatchets. And then she's like a huge guy that looks like he's wearing like a polar bear pelt or like maybe like a huge wolf pelt. He's like all white and he has like white ice like swirling all around him. This is probably where the ice is coming from. But then at that point, we see like a deputy kind of shooting wildly, and the sheriff's like, "Make sure to hit him, like aim good, partner." But then the sheriff takes a bullet and dies.
Yeah, and Crowley at this point, that sheriff he was divining, he doesn't know if the sheriff was shot by somebody else or if he was shot by the deputy in the back that was shooting blindly. And that deputy is Deputy Dale, who he talks to next.
Which I love the way that he makes him sound so cowardly.
I know.
Like, what are you doing, mister?
Yeah, it's super good. I mean, it can't be overstated how well Roger Clark does these characters. I mean, it's like I said, I think he is definitely top tier as far as narration goes. So Deputy Dale basically tells Crowley, what he saw, and he didn't see a whole lot because he was kind of hiding the whole time that most of this stuff went down.
Just being a little pussy.
Right. Basically, though, these guys came in, everything kind of started turning to ice, and Crowley is blown away by the fact that there was only 3 of them that Dale mentions, because he says, you guys let 3 bandits come in and rob your whole town blind. And Dale's like, it's mostly women and children here, and the men, most of the men don't want to pick up arms and fight, basically. So that's also how Crowley knows he's dealing with something probably supernatural, because he also has mentioned that the White Throne usually only dispatches him if there is a super before the natural that he's following.
Right.
I put this in the notes because, and we mentioned this a little bit before, and if you listen to our episode about Deadacre, it talks about this too. But basically what happened when Crowley died is that he was brought back to life to do tasks for the White Throne, for God, essentially. But Crowley himself is not religious, which I think is a great kind of dichotomy, that even though now he knows God and angels and all these things exist, he basically still doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, he doesn't really give a shit. Well, he's kind of doing this against his will, right? Like, it's not like he wants to be a hand of God. He didn't really have a choice.
Right. And it also gets brought up later because when he kind of defies Shar and she like makes his arm go zombie to show that she is still in charge of him. Yeah. So he's essentially being like told he has to do these things, or they will essentially take away this privilege they've given him to remain alive.
Yeah, and this is where Crowley talks about, right? He's like, most people think of hell as like fire and brimstone, but really it's cold and dark and like the absence of anything.
Yeah,
because heaven is like light and heat, and hell is cold and dark.
Right. It's the exact opposite of heaven, which I really like that too. I think that's a great concept. So that's right. I like too that Deputy Dale is saying that Crowley can't go in and look around in the bank because he doesn't have the authority. And I like that Crowley plucks the badge off the sheriff and puts it on Dale, and he's like, well, Sheriff, take me in there. You're in charge now.
Well, I like this little scene because he's like, well, sheriff, and he like Dale doesn't respond for a second, and even in Crowley's head, he's like, I probably took the kid off guard by
Yeah.
telling him sheriff. First time he ever heard it. Like, I love that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. This part freaks me out just slightly. So Crowley goes inside, and there's a bunch of guys frozen solid in the bank, a couple of them. And he tries to divine one of the guys by putting his hand on the block of ice where it's thinnest, and he touches the guy's skin. And he jumps into this guy's head, and there's nothing, because the guy was frozen and dying for more than the 30 seconds that
Which
Crowley could divine.
Suck.
Yeah, which is a legitimately terrifying thought. I thought was pretty. I like the way they convey it too, because it actually kind of made me, like, it gave me chills. I was like, oh God, that's horrifying.
Yeah, and so whoever did this is super powerful. They broke in, froze a bunch of people, robbed the bank, and like really quickly took off.
Yeah,
and there was like nothing anybody could do to stop them.
They were comparing them to using reverse dynamite, is what they keep calling it. Instead of dynamite exploding, the ice was, they were freezing things and then breaking them, which is essentially how they got into the vault too.
Right.
And Dale lets Crowley know that one of the only things he heard, because he was hiding most of the time this was all going on, is that he heard the big guy with the polar bear pelt saying, it's time, pack up, it's time to hit the next one. And he tells Crowley that he thinks the next closest Dufault bank is in Elkhart.
Oh, and we kind of skipped over. There's a conversation about this Dufault guy because Crowley doesn't really know who he is. He's kind of like a self-made man who has like banks all over the region, and he's like very rich, and kind of alluded to even early on that he's kind of in control of this region.
Yeah, this area that Crowley's in. That's true.
And it is important that they hit a Dufault bank specifically.
Right. Yeah. It's not just that they're going for a different bank, right? So Crowley assumes now that there will be a series of these Dufault banks that he is looking for, not just any random bank in the area. I had to put this quote in here from Crowley because I think it's great. He says, "People ain't afraid of being alone in the dark. They're afraid of not being alone in the dark."
Yeah, which is so true.
Which is very true. Yeah. I never really thought about it that way before, but it is very true that if you get that weird feeling and get scared while you're in the dark, it's not because you think you are by yourself. It's because you think you're not by yourself.
Yeah, so Crowley takes his horse, Temperina, heads towards Elkhart, and this is where we get our like first introduction to his handler, Shagrafane, that he calls Shar.
Yeah, which pisses her off because
which I love that he like doesn't give a shit about her.
That's what I mean.
He's
yeah,
so reluctant
right
to like fucking do what she wants.
And that's what I mean too. I like those things about Crowley as a character. That's the stuff that gives him a lot of character, because they could have easily just wrote it as that he looks in the mirror, Shagrafane tells him what to do, and he says, "Okay, I'll go do it," and then he puts it away. But he doesn't.
And by the power of God, defeat them, and then he shoots like holy lightning beams out of his hands.
Right. Yeah. The book's only about an hour long because he just kills everyone.
He just holds up the Bible, right? And they die.
Yeah. He reads a couple passages from Ezekiel.
Yeah, and then they change their ways. They're like, you know what? I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Did you hear what he said? He's right.
Yeah.
Basically, Shagrafane tells Crowley at this point that from the little bit that they've witnessed, she thinks that there is some demon at work, and she mentions the names Abaddon and Chakoketh as possibly being who is at work here. And we get a little bit about how the demons operate, just a little tiny bit. Basically, Abaddon is known as, the Lord of Destruction, and Crowley says he makes that very obvious that that's what he's doing, that's his title.
I like that he like talks about Abaddon. He's like, he's not sneaky. He just like punches you in the face.
Right.
He like that's just how he works. He's not gonna hide because he's like a braggadocious kind of guy.
Right. And then he talks about Chakoketh, and he says Chakoketh would just as soon, inhabit a human's body and have sex with you, and then immediately stab you. Like,
Well, I feel like it's Chakoketh. I like that they say also known as Loki. I feel like right there you kind of know what that's about.
he's a trickster god.
Yeah,
And in this area, he is specifically known as Coyote.
yeah, which is also I was like, oh shit,
Yeah,
I never even thought about it that way.
I like it.
Me too. I was like,
do
that's
like those
really
things.
cool.
Yeah,
Because it aligns like really well with like the native traditions too. Like, oh, Coyote's like kind of a trickster dickhead.
yeah,
It's like, oh man, I never even thought about it. It could have been a demon.
right. We also basically Sugarfane tells Crowley that this is what she thinks is going on. And Crowley often gets mad because he's like, why don't you just tell me what's going on? You probably already know. And Sugarfane is always very coy with him. She can't ever just come out and tell him, this is exactly what you're needing to do, even though Crowley thinks she does know. But it also goes back and forth because Crowley sometimes is like, why don't you just tell me? Or do you not even know? It's a very interesting kind of chain of command that we witness here going on between the White Throne all the way down to Crowley. It's very cool.
And she tells him, right, like, don't delay, head straight there. Don't mess around at all. I don't care what you see. You gotta go all the way there.
Right. And we should mention that he's talking to her in a little shaving mirror.
Oh yeah, he needs a reflective surface.
Yeah, that's how he talks that's how Sugarfane contacts him, is through some sort of reflective surface.
I know this is skipping ahead, but do you think she actually needs that, or is she just like power tripping and like does it to fuck with his head?
I'm not 100% sure because he can hear her
Exactly
at some parts where she's like, Crowley. Basically, his mirror is like his cell phone that she's contacting him on. But yeah, if he can hear her saying his name, why couldn't she just tell him what she needs to tell him while he's walking along?
I feel like it's a troll. She's trolling him.
She just likes to Zoom call him, man.
Yeah, I guess.
Through the mirror.
I like the face to face, okay?
Even though her face is I like that it's described as like a smoky visage. Like, it's not just
I get the
image of a
feeling that
woman.
she's probably like a biblical angel and she's horrifying. She's not like some beautiful angelic thing. She's probably like this abomination.
That's a good point. And if I was a betting man, I would bet later in the series that is going to come up.
Yeah, I bet it will.
Because it's always Sugarfane is always shown as like a very smoky visage with very few features, but in kind of a human form. That's all he can really tell. But like you said, if you really dig into the way biblical angels look, it's not like a beautiful human at all.
No, they're like horrifying eldritch abominations with a billion eyes.
And I'd be curious if that's going to come up later.
I bet you it will. I feel like there's more to heaven than them just being on the good side, I think.
Well, and without skipping ahead too much, I wanted to kind of say this early on that I like. It's not so black and white, heaven and hell, good and evil. Because when you really think about it, towards the end of this, yes, Crowley is trying to stop a demon, but he's trying to stop a demon from almost destroying a worse human being.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I think that's I like that part of the story too, is that it's not so cut and dry. Like, oh, the demon is bad, the angel is good. The demon is killing a human, which is bad. The human that he ends up saving technically is way worse than the demon is.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, like, what the demons are doing is kind of a noble thing.
Right. Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little more towards the end of the story. But I really, really liked that as in this story.
So yeah, let's move on to the next thing where he's riding Temporina along, having a good time, and this lady like comes out and she's all bloody and she's like, "You have to help me, mister. You have to help me, mister." And Crowley's kind of a sweetheart for ladies, as you will come to find out, and he follows her and he ends up getting himself in like a bit of trouble where this part is horrific to what like happened to her boyfriend. He's like emaciated, missing a leg. It looks like somebody just beat the shit out of him. He's like barely alive. And like as he comes into this cave, we get introduced to like another, I guess, servants of hell, where are like the Nephilim, which are children between demons and humans. And this one's power is that it can basically control people with a harmonica, and it's like playing a harmonica, but while it's playing, so it doesn't have to stop, it's talking through the humans' mouths, which is horrifying in itself.
Yeah, this paints a pretty solid picture, though. Honestly, this part too, even because I listened to this twice, and even the first time I got to this, I was like, God damn, this would make a great show. Like,
Yeah.
this would make a great show. Like if the people that make Love, Death, and Robots got a hold of this.
Yeah, if
and-
it was like an animated thing, it would be great.
yeah, but with like those hyper realistic looking people
Oh,
that they can do.
you talking about like the crab episode?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Where in that one too. I mean, I don't want to get into it a lot, but how they have kind of not perfect human features. That's exactly what I would picture this as being a good show. The the Nephilim too is very demonic looking. It has like goat legs and hooves, and what he at first in its silhouette looks like a goat's head, but he realizes it only has like one giant eye in the middle of its head.
Yeah.
Just cuts a very striking visage. And it actually uses its bone harmonica to control him as well, which he has never experienced up to this point.
Yeah, and so Crowley like ends up losing control of himself, and he like goes to shoot. He's like gonna make him shoot the girl, right? And then he sees like a reflection in something. I don't remember what he sees, like a reflection, and then Shar like snaps him out of it.
Yes, at the very last second.
And actually, in a brilliant move, he shoots his gun in the air to make him deaf, so he can't hear the harmonica anymore.
Shoots it right next to his own ear, to deafen himself. Yeah, which is very cool. Smart. He ends up using his black lasso on this thing.
Oh yeah.
Which, if he lassos something that is demonic or is against the White Throne, it almost renders them powerless. So he ends up being able to lasso this Nephilim, and outside of this cave that they're at, there's a bridge above them, is how I kind of picture it, because Crowley lassos this thing and climbs up the bridge and jumps off the other side to basically pull the Nephilim up onto the tracks as a train runs this thing over.
Choo choo.
Oh my gosh. And just decimates this thing. I love too how he describes all of its like guts falling down through this freaking trestle bridge, which is just disgusting. Crowley ends up
Go ahead.
Oh. Crowley ends up taking this lady Agatha back to her house because he, as you said, he's just a sweetheart when it comes to women. And all he gets in return for it is not even a thank you, because as soon as he gets there, this girl's dad comes out with his gun, brandishing it at Crowley.
Yeah.
And basically Crowley drops her off, and then he just leaves. Doesn't even say another word to them.
Yeah. But he does pick up the bone harmonica from the Nephilim, though.
Yes, he does. He does take the bone harmonica, and that is an important detail.
And doesn't he talk to Shar again? And she's like, I told you not to fucking...
Oh, yeah. She's super pissed
to
off.
go straight there. And he's like, well, I saved that girl. And he's like, yeah, but that Nephilim is small potatoes, okay?
Right. Yeah, like, apparently the Nephilim is not a big deal to the White Throne. Even though it's technically a supernatural being, it's not considered a problem.
Then they seem very selective about like what they send him on. And I'm really curious about these other black badges. I want to know like what they're up to.
Right. Well, and that's, again, it's an intriguing part of the story, that because Crowley as a character knows that that's a problem, that, like you said, they're very selective about what they want him to do, even though he's like, look, this freaking Nephilim has been in there for who knows how long, killing these innocent people, and that's not a problem to you. So it's nice that the character in the story is also realizing these things you are realizing as the listener. Crowley ends up on his way to Elkhart. He comes across some Pinkerton men, which, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows who the Pinkertons were, but back in these...
The Pinks?
the Pinks, back in these Western days, Pinkertons were a humongous conglomerate. It's almost crazy how big this organization
were
got.
Basically the police.
Yeah, but they are like mercenary police that you pay whether you want them to. Mostly it was for security is what they were paid to do. And it didn't matter what you wanted them to run security for. As long as you had the money, they would do it. And Crowley comes across 3 of them, and they're all frozen together. They're all like naked with their arms tied, and then they're frozen kind of like back to back on the ground is how I picture it. And he ends up talking to one of them, and this one ends up being Cecil, and he'll come up later on. But
which I actually like kind of the flip that happens with this guy.
I do too, actually. I like it a lot.
Because Crowley misreads this guy as kind of like just a pink asshole who's like kind of up his own ass and will do anything for his boss.
Right.
But that's not really who he is.
No. And that ends up coming up later on too. And basically these guys, their group, right, got jumped by the Frozen Trio is what ends up being called. I'll just come out and say it. He doesn't learn that yet, but that's what they end up calling him, is the Frozen Trio. And they were on their way towards Elkhart. So now Crowley, he knows he's in trouble because now he's behind the Frozen Trio because of his little detour. Now he knows he's probably way behind them.
Well, and we should mention too that they were moving some of Dufault's money. They're moving all of Dufault's money to is it Elkhart or no, to
Revelation Springs.
Revelation Springs. Yeah, they're moving all of Dufault's money to Revelation Springs, which doesn't seem like a very good idea to me, but hey, whatever.
Right. Doesn't seem like a good idea to Crowley either.
Right. Yeah, but we'll get to know more about Dufault and why he's such a moron.
Right. So Crowley ends up getting into Elkhart after the Frozen Trio has already started assaulting the bank. And basically he gets there and he tries to immediately start helping out by getting his peacemakers out and shooting at these Frozen Trio. This is when we really find out too about the sharpshooter out of the 3.
Oh yeah.
And Crowley ends up getting a look at all 3 of them, and he realizes all 3 of them are native. They're all Native Americans. And he doesn't necessarily think that's weird, but he just doesn't think that it's like, he knows something is off about that they are all 3 natives. Crowley ends up wounding the sharpshooter.
And he shoots him in the arm, and then when he shoots him in the arm, he goes slack, and like out of nowhere, this hawk attacks Crowley.
Right. And he sees the sharpshooter's eyes roll back in his head, and then this hawk comes down and attacks him. It's actually attacking Temporina because he's chasing them as they're leaving. And this part's pretty cool because he also at this point realizes the big guy is not wearing a polar bear skin, but he has white fur coming out of him and a big white beard. And he realizes this guy is most likely a Yeti. And he picks up a bag of money and he throws it up in the air, and Crowley realizes, oh shit, it's frozen solid. He's trying to hit me with this bag of money. Well, right after he does that, the sharpshooter's eyes come back to himself, and he lifts his gun up and he shoots the freaking bag of frozen money, which explodes into like 1 million sharp shards of money. Which is pretty sweet.
Green glass.
Yeah. And Crowley, in a last minute thought, doesn't want Temporina to get hurt, because Temporina is, for all intents and purposes, just a mortal horse. So,
yeah, but she's like his best friend.
Exactly. But so she
has a personality.
Oh yeah, for sure. He lays over the top of her to protect her from all of this ice, and he ends up passing out because the last thing he feels is something pierces into his head.
Right. This is where we get our first flashback.
Yeah. We end up jumping back to when Crowley was working with the Scuttlers as an outlaw with Ace Riker, which, if you'll remember from Dead Acre, Ace Riker is the one who killed him and basically put him in the situation he's in now.
Yeah, and yeah, this part's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, we get a little bit of the like dichotomy between him and his gang, how they used to be, and he has what was his best friend's name? Oh, I can't remember.
It started with a D. I can't remember
Yeah,
either.
but he had like a best friend, and before this, something had happened that had kind of like changed the feeling in the gang forever. The like some Ace had killed a woman that they didn't need to be killed, and they don't really go into it much more now. But it has kind of changed Crowley's feelings about Ace. And they're staying in this house they thought was abandoned, but they come to find out there's like a woman and a little girl there, and Ace is definitely he's gonna rape them, and Crowley just can't. He decides to stand up against Ace, and like ends up killing a couple of his guys, and they get into like a big gunfight where Crowley eventually ends up perishing.
Right. And it ends up being just Crowley and his best friend against Ace and like 9 other people. There's about 12 of them, and so it's like 10-1 odds against Crowley essentially. And ends up the final gunshot in his memory is what wakes him back up into into present time, and he has been buried alive, which is another extremely terrifying freaking thing to think about. This part is very well written, and it really gave me a sense of unease because he wakes up and like both of his hands are at his side, and he like goes to bring them forward like he's almost jumping awake, and they immediately hit the wood of a freaking coffin.
Yeah.
Which, oh my God, just gives me anxiety just thinking about it. We should also mention too, I should have mentioned this earlier, the events that are taking place in this are several months after what took place in Dead Acre.
Yeah.
It's not like immediately following Dead Acre.
Yeah, I think that's alluded to that he got up to some other stuff in between too.
Yes.
But I don't think it's super important.
Right. Crowley ends up, while he's buried alive, this is when Shargarfane essentially says, if you continue to not, listen to your orders and things like that, I can just leave you in here and allow you to die right here. And this is where she like turns his arm zombified and essentially says, I can leave you in this casket and you'll perish here.
Well, you're not perish, he'll just be forever in the
he'll
ground.
just be forever there.
And she also gives him shit for saving Temporina. It's like, why would you do that for some beast of burden?
Beast of burden, yeah.
She ain't just some damn horse.
Yeah. This is so Char, he basically says, okay, I'll follow orders. I won't do anything wrong anymore. And Shargarfane helps him to escape from the coffin. Basically, I don't exactly know what she does, and he doesn't either. All he knows is he is able to push on the lid of it, and it actually opens instead of it being completely covered in dirt. So
I thought maybe Temporina like dug him up.
Oh, that could have been. Yeah.
That because she's standing right there right when he gets out.
Yeah,
and I wonder if maybe that
out.
was going on. Like she knew that he was there.
That could be.
I kind of get the feeling, I know that Char is like dismissive, but I get the feeling that there's something special with Temporina. Sure. Like she's more than just a horse.
Yeah. Like Torrent.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude. Torrent's like the best boy.
Right. So after Crowley gets out, he knows now that since he missed out on them in Elkhart, now he needs to head to Revelation Springs, which will be the next town where Dufault is also throwing like an annual celebration of the founding of the town.
Yeah, the Founders Day.
Yeah, the Founders Day celebration. But before he does this, he decides to kind of go out of town a little ways and talk with some of the natives that live out there outside of town. And one of them is Mutt, which we actually met in the Dead Acre story.
Well, yeah, that's where he meets these people.
Yeah. So Mutt is a young boy. He says he's what, like 13 or something like that?
13, 14. Yeah.
And Mutt is a dog when he first shows up, but then he sees him as a young boy because he is actually a skinwalker who can change between dog and human.
Mm-hmm.
Mutt leads Crowley into a cave, which is behind a waterfall. and that's where all of this native tribe kind of lives, is in this cave behind this waterfall. Well, it's actually not even a cave, isn't it? Because he also mentions that there's trees in there and there's some other stuff. So
I get the feeling it's like going underneath an archway and it just like opening up into
opens
another,
up on
maybe into like a valley or something.
Yeah, they probably go through a cave to get
Yeah.
there, but then on the other side, there's like this sanctuary that they have there.
Yeah.
So Crowley talks to the leader of this tribe, and she explains. So he shows the picture, right, that he drew, that he saw on the sharpshooter's back.
Mm-hmm.
And this lady explains, she kind of points to Mutt and to herself, and she says they are skinwalkers. And then she tells Crowley, after Crowley explains that the guy controlled a hawk, that is known as a mind drifter, and that the symbol that he has on his back is known as a piazza.
Yeah, the piazza. I'm glad that you remember that.
And the piazza was actually it's a Native American god type being that a different tribe in that area had worshipped. And we'll come to find out it's actually the tribe where they settled Revelation Springs. That's where that tribe resided. I put a picture. Do you see the bottom of the notes? I put a picture.
Is that what it looks like?
That was like the closest one that I found that looks cool. The rest of them were actual cave drawings of like a bird looking thing like that.
Oh, this thing's real. That like instantly gave me a feeling of dread.
Well, it is an actual belief, I guess, in Native American culture.
Man, that's really scary. Oh God. I'm not even kidding. That kind of scares me.
Yeah. So after Crowley leaves and he's gonna head back, he ends up hearing some yells in the forest, right? And he finds freaking Dale, because Dale followed him, even though he wasn't supposed to follow him from Elkhart. Dale tried to follow him through the woods and ends up getting jumped by a group of werewolves. And one of the werewolves recognizes Crowley, right?
Yeah, because he's from the first book of the werewolves that Crowley dealt with on the side on accident, I guess, in Dead Acre. And he's like, wolf hunter, and he's like, I don't hunt wolves. That's not like what I'm supposed to do.
Guys just keep getting in my damn way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's an accident. It's not my fault.
And Mutt and Crowley fight these werewolves off. Crowley ends up he kills one of them really quickly. And then the other one has Mutt like dead to rights, basically. He's got Mutt in dog form by the throat, and he tells Crowley he wants to exchange the skinwalker for Dale, because Dale was going to be his meal.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you're interrupting my meal.
Yeah. Crowley, on a whim, takes out the Nephilim's bone harmonica and plays it, and it actually works for him. Even though he doesn't know how to play it, just blowing a melody through it and then giving a command word forces this werewolf to let go of Mutt long enough for Crowley to shoot him. And I like that the werewolf is like stunned, because Crowley's like, drop him or drop the boy or something, and he lets go of him, and then he gets this super stunned look on his face, like, why did I do that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the harmonica ends up being like an interesting thing throughout the whole book.
Right. So then Deputy Dale he basically is like, I'm sorry, I followed you, but what were those things? Did you see that? That was insane. And Crowley just punches him. He's like, what's that over there? And he hits him in the back of the head.
Yeah, he just knocks him out. Yeah.
He's like, I found the best way to deal with people when they see supernatural things is to give them a good knock and then basically make them think they were imagining it.
Yeah.
Because when they're headed towards Revelation Springs, Crowley's passed out on the back of Temperina, and he wakes up and he's like, did you see that? Those wolves back there, they were standing up and they were talking. And Crowley's like, man, you must have hit your head way harder than I thought.
Yeah, how hard did you hit your head? Yeah, that's great.
It is pretty funny. So they get to Revelation Springs, and it's being set up for this huge annual celebration that they throw there. They're setting up like a circus, essentially. There's snake oil salesmen, all the usual stuff in town.
Mm-hmm.
And Crowley thinks that Defoe is insane, knowing what he knows about this frozen trio, that he's even still going forward with the celebration.
Yeah, because obviously they're gonna come into town and tear shit up.
Right. And
he like made it all extra juicy for them because all the money is there.
Yeah, he transported a lot of his remaining money from the surrounding areas to Revelation Springs because he thought that way, if he consolidated it all in one place, it would be easier to defend it.
Yeah, which is not, I guess. Yeah, but like at the same time as the festival, so come on, dude.
Yeah. Nobody. Again, I'll tell you, just because you're rich doesn't mean you're smart. So,
that's very true.
So Defoe is the one who's actually set the bounty on the frozen trio, and it's something like $5,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, for this time, there's a lot of guys saying you could basically found your own homestead with that much money, which I bet you could do a lot more than that.
Right, which is drawing a lot of bounty hunters to town too.
Yes. Crowley ends up talking with Defoe, and we find out that Defoe founded this town in Revelation Springs, and he called it Revelation Springs because he was dying in the desert. He ended up finding both the Native American people there and water in the middle of the desert right here. It's kind of like an oasis. And I picture it being kind of at the base of a mountain because he also found out that there was gold in the mountain at the same location. So he started to mine it, and that's how he started his fortune, basically.
Yeah, and yeah, he's super rich, and but he really came from nothing too.
Right.
Like he didn't have a lot before that.
Right. Crowley ends up going to Picklefinger's bar because he needs a place to stay while he's in town, and that's where he told Dale to go and get him a room, and Picklefinger wouldn't listen to Dale, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, it's like I didn't believe that that freaking idiot was with you.
You mean this pansy? I think is what he calls him. He's like, because Dale is super cowardly. So while they're bartering for a room, this guy walks up and he's like, I have 10 gold. You can have my room. And he's all
gold? You mean dollars?
Or dollars? Yeah, $10. Yeah, gold. And Crowley decides that he'll play him because he sees some other guy running out of the bar who's bleeding. So he's like, oh, they're playing Five
And we
Finger
forgot to
Filet.
mention when he was at Defoe's place, he stole a tray of silver.
Yes, thank you. I forgot to put that. Yeah, he stole a silver
And
platter.
that is important later, is the only reason that I like bring it up and make sure and make it clear.
And I'm glad you did. He stole it with the intention because he needs more silver bullets. He wants to melt it down into more silver ammunition to fight supernatural things.
Yeah, because he's out of bullets from the last fight.
Right. He ends up playing Five Finger Filet against this guy, which I'm sure most people know is the game where you put your hand down and then you take your knife and you try to stab it in the gaps in between your fingers without actually cutting yourself. And apparently this Anton guy is super good because he does this. Basically, they have to up the ante of each other each time. So at first, they just speed up, they go faster and faster. And then Anton ends up he blindfolds himself and does it, which is crazy.
No, Crowley does that first.
Oh, Crowley does it first?
Yeah, Crowley does it and then stabs his finger off.
Oh, that's right. He cuts the end of his finger off, but Crowley can't bleed. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's fine. And so Anton's like, I knew you were peeking, but I'm going to show you what a real man does, and puts the blindfold on and ends up bleeding.
Yeah, that's right. And
Crowley, he's like,
you're
cheating. I saw you peeking through them eyelashes.
Right. And they end up getting in one of those, old timey Western brawls in the bar.
Yeah, a bar fight
where everybody starts fighting each other.
We got to mention the circus, dude. The circus is there. So the world's strongest man is there, like fucking picking people up and throwing them around.
Yeah.
And I just love, I love the imagery of, like the old timey singlet dude, just like jacked to the nines, just throwing
with
people
a huge
around.
Mustache.
Yeah, of course. You gotta have
with a huge mustache.
Handlebar mustache. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It doesn't really come up again, but we should mention too that in the circus freaks, so there's the world's strongest man, there's the bearded lady, and then there's Beast Boy. And Beast Boy is actually a Nephilim.
Yeah, but he's not like a bad Nephilim.
Right.
He's
not like, he's not killing people. So the fight ends up getting stopped because the world's strongest man grabs Crowley and throws him through the front window of the bar and shatters it out. And Crowley ends up getting arrested for this and getting put in jail in Revelation Springs. Him and Dale end up in the same cell. While they're there, he hears somebody talking with the guard, and it's a woman. And next thing he knows, Rosa Massey from Dead Acre shows up with the keys to his cell to let him out.
Yeah.
She, though, looks a lot different than last time he saw her. She's actually dressed she has a weapon this time and some other things. Like, she's not necessarily just dressed like a beautiful woman like she was in Dead Acre. She actually is dressed like she means business.
Yeah, and she's carrying a gun.
Right, a 5-shooter.
Yeah, which is weird. I didn't even really made those.
She takes Crowley back to this group that she's traveling with, and they are kind of a little ragtag bunch. And there is Irish, which is an Irish woman who does she have knives? Is that what she has?
Yeah, she's a knife stabber person.
And she's insane, and it's hilarious.
She is insane, but she's also super cool.
Yeah, she seems like a real badass.
She's unhinged for sure, though.
Yeah. There's Harker, who all we really hear of him is that Crowley talks about him. He's drawing all the time when he sees him. He's always
an artist.
Right. And then there's Abraham Stoker, or he said, everybody just calls me Bram.
Yeah.
And he shows Crowley the notes he's been taking on the vampire. So yeah, definitely the guy who wrote Dracula. And I hope that comes up later on in the series.
Yeah, and the reason like what he's doing is he's like traveling around the world looking at supernatural shit, and he took Rosa in because of her experience with the necromancer.
Yep. And Crowley tries to play coy as if he has no idea what Bram is talking about.
Right, and while they're there, he's making silver bullets, and he like comes up to him and he's like, "Yo, like I know that silver bullets are good against vampires," and he's like, "Nah, I'm making them just to sell them like a snake oil salesman. Like I'm just a genius."
Yeah, I did like that. It's kind of funny. So basically, though, oh, that's right. And then Rosa ends up going and talking with the psychic, right? While they're there.
Well, yeah, when they come back to the fair the next day.
Yeah, and this part seemed like it was cut a little short because this divination lady ends up actually being kind of legit, and she skirts Crowley's ambitions. Like, he assumes she's just full of shit, but she knows Crowley's name, she knows Rose's name, and he's like, they could have heard that while they were at the bar fight or whatever, that's easy. But then she also tells them a few things with tarot cards and stuff, and is almost spot on with the things she's saying. And Crowley's like, what the hell? Like, he doesn't get any vibes that she's anything supernatural, but something about her is off. She ends up, her eyes like roll back in her head, and she makes a connection with Crowley, which actually he starts seeing visions of like snow and ice and things like that, right as he hears Dale fire 3 times in the air, which was supposed to be the warning sign that something was going wrong.
Right.
And I gathered that as he gets a little bit of a premonition, almost way too late, that the Frozen Trio is close.
Right. Yeah, everything's just like a couple steps behind for him. It's like maybe the Almighty aren't that powerful.
Right. Well, again, I'll keep repeating it. That's what I like about this story, though. He's not one step ahead. He's not smarter than the bad guys. He, like you said, he's failing forward. And he even mentions that's almost his strategy, is to just keep trying things until it works. So when he goes back outside, though, and all this gunfire started erupting, he notices there's actually a bunch of dudes dressed in masks outside of the bank here at Revelation Springs.
Yeah, they're all in red masks except for one guy who has a black mask.
Who has a black mask on, right? And they get into a huge gunfight with him. the Pinkertons that are defending the place end up rolling up their freaking Gatling gun.
Yeah, and just like unloading.
Just obliterating the place, loading it up with bullets to the point where this group of guys, because they also had dynamite and they planned on blowing the doors off of the bank, you know, old-timey blowing the Western doors off the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up giving up because of the Gatling gun. And this part is freaking devastating to me because...
Oh my dude, this part I had my jaw like open. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. So these dudes basically say that they kind of give up, and there's only a couple of them left. And the leader of them, he is talking with or it's like Cecil, or I think it's Cecil. Well, nobody else other than Crowley sees one of the other guys slip a stick of dynamite into his hand, and he like underhand tosses it right at the sheriff, and it just jibs the sheriff right in front of everybody.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. It's freaking horrifying.
He ends up running, the guy in the black mask, the leader of this little group. And at this point, Crowley assumes it might be Anton, the guy who he played Five Finger Fillet against.
Yeah, I love that he's like, looks about Anton's size.
Yeah, he just keeps saying that. Yeah. And he ends up catching up to him, this guy, and he catches him because Irish stops him, right?
Yeah.
Irish ends up stepping in and holding her knife up to his freaking throat because she's insane. And he ends up unmasking this new leader, and it's Ace Riker from his past.
Which I wasn't expecting at all. I was like,
I wasn't
shit.
either. I thought for sure it was Anton. They did a really good job of building that up. But shortly after he catches Ace, the Frozen Trio actually shows up for real this time. And
yeah, well, it's actually really cool the way they show up, right? Like there's fireworks going off, and then Crowley notices like, wait, there's a hawk flying around with like a flaming bag of money.
Yeah. And that's what's making it look kind of like fireworks. Is there's like bills of money floating down on fire.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and then he notices the Tomahawk lady is not, because almost all of the servants here are Native Americans. And he notices one of them, this lady, is not looking where the rest of them are looking. That's how he catches her out, because she took all her paint and stuff off, her face paint. So she blends in very well. But that's the one thing that set her aside from the rest of them. And he realizes this is the Frozen Trio at work now.
Yeah, and like this is actually a pretty great part. Then like the Yeti shows up again. Do we know his name yet? I can't remember.
I don't know if they know his name yet. It's Otakte. We know his name, but I don't know if Crowley has known it yet.
And he's actually like fully transformed. Like he's almost no longer human at all.
Yeah, now he looks much more monstrous than human. And they end up setting Dufault's mansion on fire with all of this burning money. And they're yelling things about Dufault. It's very obvious now to Crowley that they are not just trying to get a hold of Dufault's wealth. They are trying to destroy Dufault as a human.
And I can't remember. Is this the part where they take the totem that he had?
Yeah, when they end up leaving, they end up grabbing the totem as well, because that's a good point. And we should have mentioned this early on, that Dufault has a totem there that is the Piasa from those Piasa tribe of native people.
Yeah, he stole it, dickhead.
Right. And at this point too, Crowley ends up killing the mind-drifted hawk and realizes that when he does that, he hears a shout of human pain from somewhere else. So he thinks that when this guy mind drifts into the creature, any pain the animal experiences, he will experiences. Sort of like when Crowley divines through someone else, he feels the pain they felt when they died.
Right.
Crowley ends up like hand-to-hand combating with Otakte in the burning mansion, which is crazy.
Yeah, which is cool.
And Crowley, is he shoot the Tomahawk lady? Does he shoot?
No, Dale kills her.
Dale kills her. Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, so like if you want to talk about that part, so they're like in the mines, right? They like have kind of like cascaded downwards as they're fighting, and like the Yeti had gone down into the middle of the mine, and Crowley followed him down there, and he lassos him, and he's got him lassoed, and they're talking.
Oh,
He's
that's
actually
right.
talking to the demon that's in there,
That's right.
and they're like talking back and forth, and then like his lasso goes slack, and he's like, oh shit,
that's
it like.
right.
Because the tomahawk lady threw her tomahawk and cut it, and he looks at the tomahawk lady, and her head just fucking explodes. Because Dale had followed him down there and actually comes up behind one of the rocks and kills the tomahawk lady. I mean, this part ends up also being pretty sad. And like as soon as Dale does that, his head also explodes like a fucking melon.
While
Which-
he's talking to Crowley, like he's standing
Which
right in
to
front
me,
of
I was like,
Crowley.
Dale, no, you just turned cool.
Same
What?
here.
It's like, fuck, man.
Again, though, I'm going to check a box on this story for being a good story because that right there proves that nobody that Crowley meets is safe. And I like that as a story. I don't like when it's always like hero complex that everybody the main character runs into also falls under his umbrella of safety.
So after they kill the tomahawk lady, the Yeti like goes into a rage, like makes a big ice wall, and picks up her body, and him and the mind drifter run away.
Right.
And
And
like
he also takes the totem.
Yeah, they take the totem, which is also important. And then like in the aftermath, Crowley comes across like this native boy that had been killed, and he divines him and finds out like Dufault basically beat him to death. Well, not basically, he did. He beat him to death because he thought he took the silver tray that Crowley took before all the chaos went down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty it's really bad.
It's brutal. It's like a young kid.
It's a young kid.
He beats the shit out of him so bad it breaks his neck and caves in his head.
Yeah, because he like punches him in the face up against a brick wall, which ends up bouncing his head off the wall multiple times too. And Crowley says that he's like, I don't know which part actually killed me, because he talks as if he is that person at the time, and he says if it was my head hitting the wall, if it was my neck, if it was the punch in the face. So it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's brutal. And like at this point, I was like, man, Defoe's a piece of shit. And he does get his comeuppance here with Crowley, which I really, really like. And this is kind of like the redemption for the Pinkerton too.
Yeah, and at this point, basically Crowley confronts Dufault about what's kind of going on here, and we find out
why they are targeting him specifically, because it had nothing to do with the money.
Right. And basically what we find out is that back in the day when Dufault, quote unquote, founded this place, essentially what he ended up doing is the native people there, this Piasa tribe, essentially saved him by allowing him to come there, and they got a hold of him and they gave him water while he was dying in the desert. And when he realized there was water and gold here, he gave them the idea. He's like, look, we can sell this stuff and make a shitload of money, basically, like any fucking white person does.
Capitalist.
Yeah, what any capitalist would do. And they were like, yeah, no, we don't do that stuff.
Well, we can't. You can't work on this ground because it's sacred ground and ancient breeding ground for the Piasa.
For the Piasa, yes, exactly. So Dufault does what any good capitalist does. He uses his parents were in the business of making like rat poison, which he thought that was beneath him to start a venture in rat poison. But he's not above the fact that he finds out he can, make wine and stuff in this valley as well. So he realizes that the native people really enjoy drinking the wine. So he puts rat poison in the wine and ends up killing their tribal leader and a few other people. And we find out that Otacte, the guy who is the Yeti, happened to have been the medicine man, right, for that tribe at the time.
Well, he was the medicine man, and he was the one who mainly opposed his like taking over of the tribe. Like he wouldn't let him do it.
Right. So Dufault just straight up shot Otacte and killed him.
Yeah.
At which point Crowley figures out that Otacte must have made a deal with the demon to be able to enact his revenge on Dufault for what he did to their tribe. So that's been in the making for a long time then, right? Because isn't this like the 23rd annual Founders Day thing.
Well, yeah, because the mind drifter, which I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. He was the son of the chief, and
that's right. Yeah.
And
his name's
tomahawk,
Ahusaka, by the way.
Yeah, Ahusaka, and the tomahawk lady was like his guardian for his life.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, they had been like planning this for quite a while, and only one of them is a demon. We should mention too.
Yes, only Otakte is possessed by a demon. Ahusaka, and I failed to write down the tomahawk lady's name.
I don't think they say it actually. I mean, maybe they do.
They probably did. It was something I didn't write down. But yes, Otakte is the only one that has the demon in him. So, and that is kind of important. And basically, yeah, we find out that this is about them getting revenge on Dufault for being such a piece of shit.
Yeah, the fact that he would like poison them like that and ends up killing a bunch of them, especially because after the chief had died, they all started drinking heavily.
Yeah.
And
he just let him do it. He didn't like stop.
He was like, there was no time to switch the wine out. It's like,
yeah.
Shut the fuck up. Why did you poison it in the first place, you piece of shit?
And the comeuppance he kind of gets is that during the fire and all this stuff, basically the town of Revelation Springs was built over the top of this mine, and during the fire, everything burned down and collapsed down into the mine. So the mine, his gold mine has now collapsed. And I like that Crowley levels his peacemaker at him, and then he turns it and he just shoots through all the wine casks that he has stored up and ruins all of them. Yeah, because Dufault is a piece of shit.
So at this point, Crowley's like, well, I got to find Ace because there's more going on here than like I realized. Like, why was he working with the Frozen Trio? Goes to find Ace, and Rosa pulled another fast one on these policemen. These policemen suck.
Oh yeah.
She took Temporina and knocked them out, and took Ace Riker because she's gonna murder this man.
Yeah.
Which I guess do we know at this point who Rosa is? Was that she was that little girl that Crowley saved from Ace?
Well, if you had listened to Dead Acre, you know that for sure, right? I don't know necessarily. I mean,
I think you're right.
They mention it in this, but Dead Acre is really the story that sets up that payoff right here.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, and Crowley basically has to convince Rosa. He's like, look, you can't kill him right now. I understand.
Well, he cheats.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He does, huh? With the bone harmonica, huh?
Yeah. He tries to convince her, and she's like, fuck it, I'm killing Ace, which she should have just done anyway. But he uses the bone harmonica
because Crowley knows she's not a killer. Remember?
That's true. He doesn't want
that's
her
why
to
she
be a
struggles.
killer.
Yeah.
But yeah, he uses the bone harmonica to convince her to not do it. And then he takes Ace hostage, and Ace is going to lead him to where the Frozen Trio were, because they've been working together this whole time, and they kind of fucked Ace over because they were supposed to help him rob the bank and they didn't show up.
Yeah, they were supposed to. Yeah, it was basically all supposed to go down at one time. Ace was supposed to bring his crew of men in, and then the Frozen Trio was supposed to attack at the same time. It was supposed to go without a hitch, but now Ace is going to betray them because they basically betrayed him when it came to the raid.
And I love that he takes Ace and just puts him on the back of his horse, like, you know, like over it like a bag of feed.
Yeah.
And doesn't give him shit.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
And he's just bouncing on the back of her.
Yeah.
I can just imagine it too, because they even say that, you know, while he's trying to talk, he can't talk because he's bouncing on the back of the horse. I think that's funny.
Oh yeah, they end up finding out like where they are, and they're like on top of this cliff. And I love that Riker's tied up, and he's like, "I can't climb with my hands bound like this." And he goes, "Learn."
Yeah,
I fucking love that.
They're being protected by hail. It's like hailing at this area too, and when they actually get there, the hail turns into like spikes and starts coming down really sharp. But Crowley kind of realizes, because he knows he wounded Otakte multiple times with silver bullets. He realizes that clearly Otakte is not nearly as strong as he was the first time they fought either. And so when they show up, Otakte ends up trying to they have a ceremony going on, right? They have the tomahawk lady. She's kind of dressed down, and then she's laying next to Ahusaka, and they also have the piazza totem there. And there's some sort of ceremony going on with this huge storm raging above them.
Right.
And when Crowley shows up, Otakte obviously stops what he's doing to try to fight Crowley. And he's still super strong because he's like a giant too. So he still puts up a good fight against Crowley. But while they're fighting, the piazza totem ends up getting struck by lightning. And it actually
it gets struck by lightning as he shoots it
with his silver bullet, right?
Yeah, which I don't know if that matters.
He even says that. He says he doesn't know if it was a coincidence or what.
Yeah.
But as that happens, it summons this piazza creature, which is almost like a bird dragon type of thing. And he realizes that Ahusaka, his eyes are rolled back, which means he has mind drifted into this creature.
Yeah, and he's flying it towards Revelation. He's going to destroy the whole town.
Yeah, instead of just being good with what they did, because Crowley's trying to tell Otaka that he's like, you don't have to do this. You already won. You beat him, and they are pissed off because they said all those other people, it's partially their fault because they helped make Dufault rich.
Yeah.
So they want to just level the whole town.
Yeah, and as they're having this conversation too, Ace Riker comes up and stabs him in the back with a knife.
Yeah, because he's like, that's what you get for betraying me, some bitch.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's like right as Crowley's getting through to him too, like he's about to like Otake's about to like, he's like, oh, maybe I am kind of a dick. And
right.
His face like becomes more human, right? Like he's gaining more human control. And then Ace just stabs him. And then he like knocks Ace into the rocks like hard enough to crack the rocks.
Yeah. Crowley ends up though getting through to him, right? They end up fighting more after that, basically to the point where Crowley he's almost killed Otakte. And he's like, look, you helped raise this kid. Don't put this on this kid's conscience. Don't make him destroy this stuff.
Yeah, don't curse him forever.
Right. And at that point, the Yeti's eyes kind of switch from monstrous to he kind of looks. Crowley realizes he's talking to the human Otakte and not the demon that's controlling the Yeti. And he reaches down and he kind of holds the kid's head, and ice forms on the kid's temples, just enough to like freeze his brain to kind of make him pass out.
Brain freeze.
Yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure would still kill you.
Yeah, if it was enough to make you pass out, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you just die, right? If he's freezing you from the outside in enough to freeze your brain to stop you from concentrating, pretty sure you just die.
And leading up to this point, Crowley, because Ahusaka was just laying on the ground, like he's pretty much helpless, and Crowley considered just shooting Ahusaka, but then he was like, if I kill the kid while he's mind drifted, will his mind just go into the piazza and now he becomes this creature? And he didn't want that to happen either.
Right.
But once Otaka freezes him and gets his mind to stop, the piazza and the storm sort of just fade out, and it just fades into non-existence again. Then let's see what happens.
Is this where the demon comes out?
The demon ends up talking to Crowley, and we find
out it's like a black swirling cloud comes out of Otakte. Yeah. And it's kind of cool that it like forms and it talks to it doesn't really talk to Crowley, it talks more to Shar.
Yeah, it knows that Shargrafane is there, which I do like. I think that's pretty cool. And I like that Crowley even recognizes it obviously as sort of a game of chess. And he even says it's just pawns destroying pawns, because that's clearly all that Otakte was a pawn, and Crowley is just a pawn, and they set them against each other. And at this point, the demon, Chakokith, we find out it was Chakokith, mentions that they were trying to recruit the Piazza to Lucifer's army. That was the whole point of this. even though Shargrafane is like, that could have been their plan, but she doesn't think that that's what their plan was.
What else would they have been doing?
Right. I did like that part though. And Crowley also realizes too, slightly before all of this stuff goes down, kind of what I mentioned in the beginning, that yes, he's trying to stop a demon, but he even mentions that to Shargrafane. He's like, this Dufault guy is way worse than what these people are trying to seek vengeance for. So it is a very interesting kind of, way that this plays out, in a sense. Like I said, it's funny that you would assume the demon is the worst part, but in reality, they were trying to get rid of the worst part in Dufault.
Right.
At this point,
and then go ahead.
Well, at this point, right, is when he runs back into Ace, who has now taken.
Well, he runs
hostage.
he runs into Rosa, and Rosa is beating the shit out of Ace with a stick.
Oh, that's right. She has the stick. Yeah, that's right. Go ahead and explain this part.
So yeah, Rosa had followed him just to see like what Crowley was up to, and she noticed Ace had got away, so she like stopped him and hit him with a stick, and they kind of get together, and then Crowley's gonna shoot him, but then at this point, Ace's gang rolls up. All of his dudes roll up, and they kind of like take them hostage a little bit. And at one point, he gets a hold of the harmonica, right? Ace gets a hold of the harmonica, and it's like making Rosa do some fucked up shit. But at this point, they shoot the shit out of Crowley, and obviously it doesn't kill him, and so he's able to turn and kill them all except for Anton, right?
I can't remember. Does Anton? I feel like he didn't kill Anton.
Maybe he killed them all. I can't quite remember.
But I swear, because he says he puts a bullet in all of Ace's men, and they all stand, because their brain hasn't registered yet that they're dead. So right. I'm assuming Anton was part of that.
Yeah, maybe he's dead. Maybe it's not a big deal. And they take Ace hostage. And Rosa's like, how did you survive that? And he's like, I got a metal vest under here. It's real medieval.
Yeah. It was real expensive, and I took a gamble on it.
I took a gamble and hoped it would work.
Yeah.
And they take Ace in, they turn him in, they get a huge bounty for him turning in, which he gives back to Revelations for them to rebuild.
Right.
And then we watch Ace get hung, which is kind of brutal, but it is a nice kind of like closing bit on him that like Crowley's kind of seeing him finally go away. Right. Or is he?
This ending is it's oddly abrupt, in my opinion, because
what do you mean? I feel like it's kind of the end.
No. I'm not talking about the epilogue. I'm talking about the end of the story, because they basically say that Ace was hung, and the crowd sort of starts to disperse because, after the hanging, it's just a hanging body. It's nothing really to see anymore. And that's it. Like, that's it. I mean, it doesn't say like, oh, and then I'm going to go do this, or it just ends. But then we get the epilogue, which is very interesting. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So the epilogue happens. We get, like, from Ace Riker's point of view, he like wakes up in a grave and like digs himself out, and then he has a scar on his chest like actually I don't know if it's like Crowley's. Maybe that's a lie.
I think it is
something. I don't know. I'm gonna tell you what I think is going on here.
Okay.
So he comes back
yeah. Explain exactly what happens first, then tell me what you think happened.
So he comes back, and I don't remember this guy's name. I don't know if you have it written here.
No.
So he talks to a different angel, and he is a black badge for this angel, and his job is to kill Crowley because Crowley is like becoming demonic or something, and he's going against his orders. Which I think what's going on here is this is a demon that brought him back.
That would make the most sense, to be honest.
I think he's getting conned into thinking he's working for the White Throne like Crowley is, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah, because I didn't fully understand this.
Because I think Shar's in charge of all the black badges.
I mean, he mentions that each black badge has their own handler. So
but but freaking Chakotay knew that he was part of Shar's like immediately, which makes me think that she is in charge of all the like that facet of Heaven's defenses are under Shar's control.
And that very
Does that
well
make
could
sense?
be, yeah.
I feel like Ace is because Ace was such a piece of shit. Sure, Crowley was a piece of shit, but here's why I think he got brought back was because in his last act was a noble deed, right?
For Crowley?
Yeah, for Crowley. His last thing he did was noble.
His
Ace
made the
didn't
most
do
sense.
that shit.
Exactly. And this, and you're right, because when he gets brought back, the angel says, you have, what does he say? You've paid a debt or something like that. Yeah. And I'm racking my brain. I'm like, paid what debt? Because he stopped the Yeti from killing Crowley, but then,
Crowley was kind of had him snowed at that point, and I feel like he wouldn't have died.
That part didn't make any sense. So you very well could be on to something that it's actually a demon bringing Ace Riker back to make him Crowley's freaking arch nemesis.
Like nemesis, like an undying force coming after Crowley too. Which how do you kill Crowley? Like I don't think you can.
Well, and even Crowley doesn't know because he said that before. He's like, if I get blown into a million pieces, do I actually die? Or will I come back to the biggest piece? Will I reform from the biggest piece? Yeah, I don't know. All I know is that's the end of the book, and I'm super excited. Like I said at the beginning, this is a series
I'm looking forward to for
absolutely.
The rest of my life.
Yeah, this will be another one. Yeah, that I will definitely be looking forward to when the next one comes out. And again, now that we're here at the end for the wrap-up stuff, I just can't say thank you enough that we were given the opportunity to even review this one early. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I gotta listen to this before you guys could even buy it.
Yes, and it's just a huge privilege for us to get to do that. Again, I know.
Yeah, it was insane. I can't believe this is happening. It's amazing.
So yeah, what do you think? You got anything else on this one?
Nope. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it's because of your guys' support that we're even able to do stuff like this. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it means a big deal. Click those like buttons, share it with your friends, tell your friends about it. If you know somebody who likes audiobooks, they're probably gonna like this podcast too. Word of mouth will go a long way. Just thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do. We appreciate every single listen that we get, even if the numbers aren't high. That's not what matters to us. The numbers, just the fact that people are listening, is awesome to us. And we hope to be able to do things like this. I think this is some of what makes this cool, is if we have those early reviews to help people actually make decisions on some of these books. That'll be a big one for us. So yeah, do we know what we're doing next time, Bo?
I guess we could loop back to what we were gonna do. What is it called?
It was like a Knights of the Round Table thing, right?
Yeah, like a history of King Arthur.
King Arthur. Oh, I'm trying to pull it up.
Where's my phone?
I got mine. Hang on, I'll have it in just a second. So my phone's super slow right now. When I need it to be fast. It's called The Story of King Arthur and His Knights by Howard Pyle. Narrated by David Thorne. If you guys want to listen ahead, or if you want to wait for our review and find out if it's even worth listening to.
Yeah, very true.
So with that, we hope to catch you all in the next one.